When Somerville was announced in 2021, I was instantly hooked with its art style and dystopian vibes from the very first trailer. This came as no surprise to me, as the newly formed studio behind the game, Jumpship, was co-founded and headed by Dino Patti, previous co-founder of Playdead and executive producer on their first two games, Limbo and Inside, analysis of which you can find right here on this very channel if you're so inclined. Dino Patti left Playdead in 2016 after the release of Inside, confident the company could manage without him after spending a decade within its walls since conception. I mean that metaphorically, of course, he wasn't literally hiding within the walls of the building for 10 years. He shot off to the UK, seeking new challenges, going on to found Jumpship in June of 2017. Real development on Somerville began once Jumpship was established, this being their debut title, releasing in November of 2022, after around 5 years of development. Since I've covered Playdead's previous games, I figured it was about time to finally get around to giving Somerville a whirl, and I must say, I was pleasantly surprised. Somerville is a sci-fi action-adventure platformer headed by the co-founder and producer of Playdead, and therefore, despite not being a Playdead game, very obviously carries over previous experience Patti gained working there, knowing which elements of his previous studio's formula to draw from to help inspire his own studio's new creative vision. You may therefore consider this another entry in my series of Playdead or now Playdead-esque style games, with this title drawing a myriad of parallels to the games that came before it. With that being said, I don't wish to diminish how much this game exists as its own work, as it doesn't feel in any way like a replica of the games Patti has previously worked on, but rather a diverging creative path consisting of him and his team's own artistic vision. Now I've got the formalities out of the way, let's dive in to Somerville. The game's tone is set right from the menu, a thunderous night in a dark English countryside, with the building tension of a storm brewing in the far distance. It gives the introduction of Somerville this aura, a foreboding sense of calm before catastrophe. The narrative begins with a shot of a solitary obelisk suspended in the foreground of Earth's sun, waiting, dormant perhaps, but I fear not for long. I love the use of taking such a simple and minimalist object here, and being able to frame it in such an instantly threatening manner. The opening titles have us follow a car through the winding roads of the countryside, with this backing of a piano ballad accompanying the scene as it gradually builds in intensity. Set up for the tone of Somerville was immediately working wonders, and the vibes alone from the eerie soundtrack and visuals had me already invested on the journey to come. The use of film grain here and the letterboxed effect gives a very intentional cinematic feel to the scene at play here, and I love that this is a core part of the direction they wish to communicate, with this aspect ratio remaining constant throughout the game all the way through to the end credits. The use of film grain I feel is less so for a nostalgic effect or to summon a sense of tangible physicality to the game, a way in which, depending on the context, others may use it for, but more so intended to be representative of Jumpship's artistic vision, of a more gritty and tarnished world, with the film grain implemented to invoke a more abstract sense of melancholy and loneliness on an emotional level, which I think sets the atmosphere nicely. The car backs into a driveway of a lonely farmhouse where the family we're following park up and disembark, and here you see they have a small dog and a child, to which I thought, oh no, this is going to be one of those tear your heart out and stomp on it kind of games, isn't it? The initial world building is prompted by the beginning gameplay starting in a creative manner I wouldn't expect. The family sit asleep, gathered around the TV, where you have this indistinguishable dialogue coming from it, but done so in a classic cadence newsreaders are synonymous for speaking in. You don't see whatever is shown on screen and can't make out the spoken words, and yet it's still perfectly communicated to you that a news bulletin is being broadcast through context clues and audio aspects from the environmental storytelling. Even the changing colour of the hue emanating from the screen helps tell us that, despite not being identified to us yet, there is a threat soon approaching. And it's purple! What follows are explosions on the TV, waking the toddler, and the broadcast signal being lost, cutting to dead static, another universal trope of imminent disaster. The beginning portion of gameplay has us embody the toddler, the only one woken by the TV, which took me by surprise. I love that we first get to explore the environment as him, serving us a different context in how we interact with everything. My initial gamer instincts tell me to head towards all the noise coming from the front door. Monstrous sounds and physical force breaking through from the other side, accompanied with the same purple hue identical to the one on the TV, permeating through the windows. Quickly though, whatever lurks outside vanishes from the front door, making me wonder, if it's no longer there, then where is it now? Visual clues from the blinking light near the plug socket here help indicate which objects are interactable without the need of tutorials or a heads-up display, which I find essential in these types of games to retain a cinematic immersion. As you explore the house, more teasers just out of sight of whatever creature lurks outside are given to us, and it's made clear what objects are interactable in-game with the placement of yellow cloth on the drawers here. Colour indicators are fairly common in games, but I always appreciate the seamlessness of blending these markers for gameplay amidst environments. Inevitably slipping up with some kitchen parkour and bursting into tears, The toddler wakes the rest of the family and we gain control of the man, our main character for the game. Feeling a little more confident as a grown-up, I head outside, letting our dog out for a wander. Whatever creatures were here are gone for now, but we're not left to forget about the impending threat, the camera showing the player a far obelisk in the distant sky. This whole first act at the farmhouse does an excellent job at world building, presenting to the player all the visual cues to understand the initial build-up for the plot the game wants to tell. Obviously, much like Limbo and Inside, clearly Jumpship went with the same approach and design here, choosing no written or spoken dialogue and relying entirely on visual audio storytelling to convey its narrative, an approach I always love to see. The core events of the game soon kick off as a loud object crashes down outside, shaking the foundations of the house and flickering the lights. In a panicked state, you head outside and discover a smaller obelisk pulsating with light entrenched in the ground. This, however, only being the first. Above, one of the large spaceships descends before an all-out battle begins to ensue. Rushing back inside, the family begin to plan their escape, grabbing an emergency bag and absconding from their home post-haste, with one final embrace, in case the worst were to happen. They rush to their car, their only form of escape being destroyed under another crashing obelisk. With no other choice, the family head back inside, down to the basement, which I didn't know we had for houses in England, I can't lie, and huddle together in the safest spot, praying for their survival. Another destructive crash penetrates the basement as an injured man, observably human but definitely not wearing human attire, reaches out for you, prompting you to take his hand. And well, how could we not? He's injured and needs our help. Grabbing him, we get a mysterious vision before collapsing. The other man seemingly disintegrates, now having shown us whatever the hell that was in his final moments, and the woman comes to our side, grieving at the loss of her husband and the father of their child. An undisclosed amount of time later, we awaken, the strange man having imbued us with some form of light and matter-based powers. Our wife and child are gone, all that remains of the man's family being his dog waiting by his side. Bless. This begins the core journey in Somerville, seeking our divided family whilst avoiding being abducted, probed, or otherwise killed by the aliens, I suppose. This direction being unique to Somerville, where Limbo was dystopian in an otherworldly sense, as if it took place upon some other realm of existence, and Inside existed similarly on a hostile but apocalyptic plane. Somerville also captures that similar essential essence from those other games, but puts its own sci-fi twist on its narrative. Its initial premise is also intimate, personal, and relatable. In a story that focuses on everyday people in an otherwise world-spanning threat, it decides to say, what about the people sat at home watching TV? How would they go about navigating these events? Or at least that's what it's saying for now. Down here in the basement is where one of the core game mechanics is introduced, your matter powers. The initial puzzle here simply shows you that you have the ability to dissolve the strange alien matter that is congregated at the base of the stairs by interacting with the lamp on the workbench, thus turning the regular light into blue superpowered imbued light. Exiting the dilapidated house you once called home, you set off beyond your cosy country life into the now unknown world full of potential threats. What doesn't pose a threat, however, are these little small robot balls that you encounter across your time with the game. These little guys aren't hostile, which is nice, and I believe they're even trying to communicate with you, although I personally couldn't figure out how to respond. I do like the detail of our dog here being wary of these strange entities, more visual storytelling to show how they're feeling and believably depict them as a wary little pooch. It shows Jumpship care about building their characters, even if it's just a dog, which is a nice touch. The balls seem to exist solely to suck up the leftover matter from the crashed alien vessels and used weaponry, perhaps to recycle it for future use, or maybe they just really care about the environment, who knows. At this point the game is also letting us journey through a much larger area than the beginning act, with another development upon the classic Playdead formula here. Where Limbo was restricted solely to a 2D plane, with Inside building upon this, giving its environments depth in a 2.5D world but still funneling the player on a 2D path, Somerville expands the depths of not just the world but player control into the 3D, letting you move around all these environments the game presents to you. This feels like a natural evolution of the game formula I loved, but giving another dimension to everything leads to another layer of interactability with the world space. This is also executed in a way that doesn't rob you of any things I loved about the formula. You still have beautifully crafted environments, linear gameplay with a few more options on what paths you take sometimes, and a cinematic camera fixed on you at all times, with it being perfectly framed to retain immersion and show the player exactly what they need to see at any given moment during gameplay. The camera is also directed exactly as needed, whether it's pulling back when necessary in larger areas for gameplay or simply showing off some of the gorgeous shots they've crafted. There are never any technical glitches or awkward angles. I'm happy to say the entirety of the game tackles this development perfectly, with all of it being seamless scene to scene. What the fuck is that? The next section lets me touch on how some of the other puzzles in the game are crafted in the framework of this sci-fi world. This one having you be quick on your feet. At a moment's notice, you'll have an alien ship produce a sweeping scan of the area. Despite looking fantastic through the trees here, this section utilises the already pre-established fact that the purple light is alien, and with the aliens being a threat, you instinctively know you need to avoid it. The goal here being to take cover at the nearest opportunity, with a couple of scenarios having you dodge the light in a different way. This pulls from the Playdead formula of if you fail, try and try again. I thought myself smart enough to have this puzzle formula sussed by now, but credit where credit's due, the folks over at Jumpship proved me wrong on that one. My very first death not even being from a slip up on a fast-paced adrenaline-fueled section, but a simple yet obvious mistake on my part, showing if nothing else that they still love catching you unawares with a death or two. This one was done by incorporating into it some of the world building here, with alien matter caught on a crashed military fighter jet from the raging battle above a few hours prior. As we continue onwards, so does the visual storytelling. Dissipating the matter to a cave entrance, you come across drawings on the walls illuminated by a well-lit fire with pillows, blankets and soft toys arranged around it. A small child quickly closes off an alcove and is gone before we get the chance to speak with him. This hideaway acts as environmental storytelling for a place where perhaps a group of kids used to go to get away from things, this being their secret den only they knew about, a perfect place to be or head to once the invasion began. Was the kid here on his own the whole time? Where are their friends or family? Questions laid out naturally in the world that we'll never have answers to. That's not the only lost soul we come across either. Advancing through a motorway littered with abandoned cars, hey, it's that thing again, we arrive at the remains of a music festival. I love the choice to include this area. There's something so surreal about traipsing through such an event which would normally have copious amounts of life all around us, now dead silent, bar the light wind and rain pattering on the sea of empty tents. We only come across a couple people that remain from thousands, one hiding maybe too fearful to leave and another wanting nothing more than to get out of here. Both avoid us, which is understandable given the circumstances. The fact you don't interact with anyone is paramount to the atmosphere the game is trying to build around you. It wants to give you that sense of feeling alone and isolated. This section is overall more chilled out than the other portions of the game, having you take your time with some of my favourite types of puzzles, ones that are obvious but only upon completion, such as this lamp here, which won't reach, just needing to be untangled, or the lights here needing to be raised slightly, much like real life. Yet, it's strange how our brains work to overcomplicate things like basic physics when playing games. These both very effectively utilise the pre-established mechanics of light being called to the gameplay, and figuring out how to disperse it at the correct angles is just great stuff. The main stage at the festival is probably one of the best puzzles in the game, having you utilise all the abandoned equipment and work the cameras, lighting and rigging to find a way to progress. The festival section is where you come across your first of these hunter-seeker type robots, which remind me of the ones from Horizon and are very much hostile, unlike those little friendly balls we encounter across the game. Eventually finding you, a chase ensues, and the unsettling figure from earlier ends up revealing himself to be friend, not foe, although we don't remain companions for long since you're soon separated. How we survive that fall, I don't know. And being unable to save him, we get another vision of this guy now in one of those pods, before he flashbangs us and dissipates like the last guy. This evolves our powers and gives us the ability to not just dissipate matter with blue light, but harden it with red, turning it into a solid state and being able to interact with the alien matter in a whole new way, now using it to walk on or even climb upon. These flare sections down in the mines really show off how the visual effects regarding the alien matter look at their best, even in the game's simplistic art style. The way it's programmed to fold back on itself as you melt it away looks so damn good. It's also incorporated into gameplay down in the mines, with these water-based levels, which is done brilliantly and really ups the amount of brain power needed to get past these trickier sections. Eventually you find your way out of the mines and down some rapids leading you into the ruins nearer to inner London. I'm assuming this is set near London because of all the buses littering the world. God knows how your dog, last seen at the festival, has also found his way home to you, but I guess their bond is simply too strong for even an alien apocalypse to break. Exhausted and injured, you collapse outside a warehouse, before awakening sometime later. Now, I'm going to be heading into the final act of the game here, so if you haven't played or are undecided on if you wish to, I do still recommend you give Somerville a go. It took me a total of 3 hours to finish it, so it's quick enough to get through, and the majority of the game holds up really well, so I highly recommend it. Just, if you can, play it on a newer generation console, because I had some filthy little frame drops on my Xbox One, and 30 FPS just doesn't do it justice. I also don't wish to influence your opinions on how the game concludes, because let me tell you, I have my opinions here. After awakening from from your well-needed nap, you begin to explore the supermarket warehouse, turned into a centre of refuge for others who have also been fortunate enough to find their way here. I really like the way this place is presented to us, and may well be my favourite portion of visual storytelling in the game. You have people grieving or simply talking through the events which have presumably brought about the end of the world. A priest stands with others who pray, thankfully someone here to help those who hold faith in higher powers, because if you need faith at any time, it would be for something like this. More than one vigil of remembrance is lit here for all those loved ones lost, and in one of the back rooms a rudimentary cardboard box castle has been built to still try and bring some joy to the children that survived, including our own son, who we get to embrace along with our wife, who both made it here safe and sound. I can't lie, this scene might have made me close to tearing up a little bit too. After that touching reunion, which was also quite convenient that our family ended up here too, but I can get past that particular contrivance, we head back out all together again, freaking out the missus with our new superpowers as we do so. I was really enjoying making my way through this version of London lying in ruin. You don't see a great deal of games set in the UK, so I savoured the opportunity to see a red bus with blue seats and go, hey, I've been on one of those. Before long, my enjoyment is brought to a halt as the hunter-seekers find you again and you're thrust into a neat little try and fail stealth section, carefully needing you to tread around all these creatures and not alert them. You are inevitably detected, and what ensues is a climactic chase through the streets and into a bookshop. The wife decides she's had enough and stays standing there while we run into a dead end, before being rescued by a final superpowered human character, this one utilising the purple light before only being used as a threatening colour, now being used to save our family as we make a break for it into the church and up towards the spire. The alien bombardment is too much, and we only just make it on board a military ship here to rescue us, our family once again divided, left behind to the mercy of the invaders. This is where the game takes a strange turn, because despite the game obviously being grounded in sci-fi themes, I'm not too sure about the direction it decides for its final act. You're taken to an underwater base housing this advanced military group. As a side note, I'm still not sure if the technology they have is just advanced or having been salvaged from aliens previously, it's not really made clear. You're ejected from one of these same pods that the previous light-based power-enhanced individuals you encountered were in when they showed you visions of their time here. I presume given that they were dying, they passed their abilities onto you in hopes that you would make it here and complete the task they were intending to do together. You're then subjected to a series of tests in front of an audience, testing how you handle both of your light-based powers. Once you successfully complete them and are deemed worthy of completing the task that the other heroes could not, you hop into one of these pods with the final purple-coloured hero and are both sent to a machine that cycles the alien matter on rotation, building up some form of energy. It's easy enough to get the hang of it and learn what you're meant to do, whilst also being easily the most visually impressive set pieces of the game, but this is where I was beginning to lose my grasp on what was happening narratively. After building up enough energy in the big Energizer, you're shot from the cannon directly into the heart of the mothership, and the final half an hour of the game is just confusing, not in the head scratching I wonder what's happening here kind of way, more in a this is just becoming incoherent kind of way. I'm becoming incoherent. More in a this is just becoming incoherent kind of way. You wake up back at home, heading outside, hearing the same explosions as when the invasion began, only to be greeted by a firework display. All of this seemingly one big nightmare that never happened, which might have been a one way to end the game, but you soon clock on to the fact that this is merely a dream sequence set up to subvert your expectations. Back inside, you recreate your actions from the beginning of the game, albeit with some minor alterations. You go through some usual dream sequence malarkey, soon retreading your steps down in the mine, but this time dissipating your way through the cave walls and coming across your family. You take a seat with them, which fades to black. You're then shown to be dead, alone on the couch, not really having been reunited with your family at all. I then respawned and, trying again, found out they too were merely an illusion and not real at all, which, I already knew because this was a dream sequence, but did they intend for me to know that I wasn't meant to sit down with them? I assumed that it was scripted, not a point I could potentially fail at, but moving on. Next, you interact with these glimpses into points of different children's lives. I did look up what the hell was happening here, and this might be showing off other people trapped in simulations like our main protagonist. This is also interjected with another simulation where you gain the purple hero's powers, finishing the set and now being able to free the others from the alien's grasp. The very final minutes of the game depict you coming face to face with three towering alien entities, all being the same colours as those of the heroes you met along the game. You join hands with hundreds of other people and communicate to the alien entities using your powers. Now, I tried to repeat the sounds they produced to me, Close Encounters of the Third Kind style, but it didn't seem to do anything. Spamming a few buttons next, the family home pops up, you're greeted by the man's wife and kid, I head inside, and the credits roll. I got a post-credit scene of the house emerged in an endless lake, and that's the end of the game. What the fuck was any of that? I have no problem with an ambiguous ending. That's what Limbo and Inside both did, and I loved it. But their narratives both left me fulfilled with their respective endings by the time the end credits rolled. They left me asking the curious question of what did all of this mean, and not the frustrated question of how did I even get this ending. I later discovered that this game also has multiple endings, so the ending I somehow reached wasn't even the only one available. Although I like when games have multiple endings, here for Somerville, and perhaps for any games that are similar to it, it doesn't work very well. The fact you rely purely upon visual and audio storytelling in these games means that if you want to let me know I have a choice in the final outcome, you need to do a good job communicating such. I didn't even know what the tail end of the game was even about, let alone that I was deciding upon what happened. My final outcome was reached by spamming buttons by accident, as repeating the signals didn't work at first. Ironically, in an effort to have the final act have you communicate with these aliens, the developers alienated their audience by forgetting to communicate what was happening with the player. The other choices were to free your family, but sacrifice yourself in the process, blow everything up and destroy the entities, ending the invasion, or somehow remember and repeat alternative signals that the little balls have been using to communicate with you throughout the game. You input those and convince the aliens to just surrender the invasion and leave, giving you a happy ending. How was I meant to know any of this? The bottom line here is I feel, although in concept multiple endings sound nice, they botched their execution here. By having a set linear ending to the story of Somerville, at least even if I was confused by it, it wouldn't have left me disappointed with the ending I got, wondering if another one could have been better, and annoyed with the fact I didn't even know how to get it. On top of this, the promise of a narrative about regular, everyday people navigating their way through the repercussions of catastrophe, one which delivered so strongly in other areas during the game, was ditched in the end for a bombastic sci-fi finale, leaving that personal, emotional family story I was invested in. Somerville is a good game, a great game even. Beautifully made, visually stunning and full of heart, and a development on the formula Dino Patti knew worked well and wanted to improve upon. But Jumpship's debut game here, one of which the design has depths of promise, failed on a narrative front to see through to the end what I loved about Patti's previous games, that tight focus on its story's core themes that Limbo and Inside flawlessly executed upon. And therefore, I can say Somerville nearly did Playdead better than Playdead. Thank you for watching.